Hola clase, this is Miss Sarabia, Señorita Sarabia here. Today we're going to talk about the verbo ser. It's a portion of our gramática and it is a verb ser. So we're going to be discussing the verb and a little bit more about irregular and regular verbs and their function within the Spanish language. So let's go ahead and start off with our essential question. Our essential question is, what are the similarities and differences between Spanish and English verbs? So as we're going through this PowerPoint, please make sure you're taking note and paying attention to the function of Spanish verbs and also to the function of English verbs and how they both work within their own languages. So right now you should have your notebook out and open to page 19. We've already completed la tabla de contenidos in class. On page 19 right here at the top right hand corner, you should have the page 19. You should title it Verbo Ser, and you should have a subtitle of Preguntas de Repaso. So we're going to go ahead and start with our repaso questions, which is a bit of a warm-up, which we do in class, sometimes on Schoology, sometimes we do it in our notebook. So here are the 4 questions we're going to be discussing. Number 1, what is a verb? So go ahead and give me a definition, a very simple definition of what is a verb. Number 2, what are some examples of verbs? So I want this question to be answered in English. Give me at least 3 examples of verbs. Question number 3, what are the endings of verbs in Spanish? So you're going to have to go back in our notebook, specifically where we did the conversation piece with your partner, and look through that and see what are the endings of the verbs that we have used then. Then I want you just to take a guess and tell me, what do you think the difference is between a regular Spanish verb and an irregular Spanish verb? So I'm going to set up a timer for about 3 minutes, but I'm going to cut it off about midway so you can just have a chance to write your responses to this. Now the responses to this could be done in 2 different ways. One, you can go ahead and write the question, and you can just write then bullet points or any small points like that. Or 2, you can answer in complete sentences and not have to write the question. The option is yours. So I'm going to go ahead and start the question and then we'll review. If you need to give yourself additional time, please feel free to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer, but if you need additional time, go ahead and pause the video and finish your answers, and then we'll go on from there. So let's review. What is a verb? A verb is an action word or a word that shows action. What are some examples of verbs? Now, if you chose different ones, it's okay, but I would prefer that they didn't end in ing. Make sure that they're just a regular run, talk, walk, jump, just because the ing verbs are a different type of verb and we're not there just yet, but we will be getting to those ing verbs. Number 3, what are the verb endings in Spanish? So if you look back in your notebook, you would see that they end in AR, ER, and IR. Now I asked you to analyze and see if you can guess what is the difference between a regular Spanish verb and an irregular Spanish verb. Well, I wanted to focus on the word hablar. That's a word that we use a lot. And that is a regular verb, and it follows a specific pattern. So when we change it, which is conjugating the verb, we drop the AR, so we would drop this right here, and then we add the ending. So according to who or whom we're talking to or of is the ending that we would use. I'm sorry, going back here. Now an irregular verb does not follow a specific pattern, so there's no ending drop. We just kind of have to go with the different conjugations. Now, it's really important to note that unlike English, Spanish sentences do not require a subject. Now, why do they not require a subject? That's because our Spanish verb gives us all the information that we need about the subject, so we already know who we're talking about. So I know my Spanish speakers and some non-Spanish speakers have the habit of doing this. It's okay, I'm just giving you a shortcut here. So an example would be soy de Chicago. Now, if you wrote that down right here, soy de Chicago, that's fine. But if you put yo soy de Chicago, adding this right here, that's also fine. But I just want you to note that you don't have to use yo, tú, él for everything because the verb carries all that information for us. So that's just one trick of shortening our sentences in Spanish. Now, what about English? What if we tried to say, I work in Chicago, but we left out that pronoun? Well, the verbs in English, unfortunately, do not carry that information like a Spanish verb does, and it would sound something like work in Chicago. And that's ambiguous, meaning that, who works in Chicago? Do you? Do I? Do they? Do we? Who works there? So it isn't specific like the Spanish ones are. Now, one of the big things about the verbo ser is that it is irregular. And most verbs in Spanish do have that typical predictable pattern, but ser doesn't, and it's actually the most irregular verb in the language. So this being one of our big major verbs, it's a really tough way to start, but I know we can all handle it. So we need to make sure that our notebook is set up properly. We need to have page 20 right here. We need to have the verbo ser and our foldable. As I go along, make sure that you're filling out the conjugation on the inside for our foldable, like we set it up in class. If I go too fast through these sentences, please feel free to stop the video and go back as needed. Yo soy maestra. Tú eres estudiante. Mi mamá es de California. Ella es de California. Mi papá es de Sinaloa. Él es de Sinaloa. Nosotros somos americanos. Nosotros somos americanos. Ellos son de Puerto Rico. Ustedes son estudiantes. Usted es directora. So now, if you had to stop or you had to go through them again, here is the actual conjugations. Yo soy, tú eres, él es, ella es, ustedes, nosotros somos, ellos son, ustedes son. Now, the definition of the verbo ser means to be, and it focuses on two things, something that you are and origin, where you are from. So it's really trying to, this verb you use to explain where you are from. So again, origin, not point A to point B. Not saying I'm coming from this place to point B. That would be a different verb that we'll talk about in the future. But this one is origin, where you are from, where you are born. So if you noticed, it does follow that unexpected irregular pattern, and these are the English forms of the verbo ser. Before we go, I'm going to show a small clip, and I'll have it linked at the bottom on Schoology so you can finish watching The Princess of Ser, a good way to recap our lesson.
Got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute to sit right there, because I'd like you all to learn about the Spanish verb ser.
So as I said, I'll link this at the bottom, and you can go ahead and finish watching there. Please email me with any questions, thoughts, or concerns.